There is a version of you that an avoidant cannot defend against. Not the version that tries harder, not the version that reads everything about attachment theory and applies it with careful, anxious precision. Not the version that monitors the dynamic constantly, adjusting and recalibrating and making itself smaller or larger or more available or less available, depending on whatever the temperature of the last interaction seemed to suggest was needed. A different version entirely, one that is not organised around the avoidant at all. This is the version that breaks the system, that walks through the defences not by dismantling them, but by being, so completely and so genuinely, something the defences were never designed to manage. The deactivating strategies, the minimisation, the focus on flaws, the retreat into the comfort of self-sufficiency, were built for a specific type of relational input. They were calibrated for pursuit, for need, for the pressure of someone whose emotional state is contingent on the avoidance response. They were not built for this. What follows is the complete picture of who this person is. Not a checklist, not a performance guide, the actual interior and exterior reality of the specific human being that the avoidant nervous system, against its own design, against its own history, against every wall it has spent decades constructing, falls for. Completely. Irreversibly. In the specific way that the avoidance system, when it falls, falls. Like it never expected to. Like it was not supposed to. Like something has gone beautifully, terrifyingly wrong with the architecture. Before anything else, before the qualities, before the specific picture, before the map of who this person is, understand what falling means for an avoidant, because it does not look like falling looks in other people. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive as a flood. It moves differently, underground first, below the level of what the management strategies can intercept, in the specific, cellular, below articulation way that the most real things move in a system that has spent its entire existence learning to intercept the real things before they surface. The avoidant does not one day decide they are in love. They find themselves, gradually and then with increasing unavoidability, in a state that the management strategies cannot adequately explain away. Thoughts that return without invitation, a quality of attention that cannot be redirected by will. The specific person surfacing in the middle of entirely unrelated experience, while doing something that should have nothing to do with them, in a moment that offers no obvious trigger, with a frequency and a particularity that the deactivating narrative of "this is not that serious" runs out of adequate response to. The falling happens before the avoidant has words for it, and by the time the words become available, it is already too late to manage. This is what the specific person does to them, and what the specific person is what matters now. The first and most foundational quality. This person is at home in themselves in a way that does not require witnesses, not performing self-possession, not deploying confidence as a strategy. Actually, structurally, in the daily lived texture of their existence, at home, comfortable with their own company, in a way that is not loneliness managed, but solitude genuinely inhabited. Familiar with their own interior, in a way that produces, in everything they do and say and choose, a quality of alignment, of someone whose outside and inside are not in constant negotiation, who is not running two simultaneous versions of themselves, the one they are and the one they are trying to appear to be. The avoidance system, which has spent its entire existence perfecting the gap between interior and exterior, feeling one thing, presenting another, encounters this alignment and registers something it was not prepared for. Recognition. The specific, disorienting recognition of something they have been working toward their entire lives without being able to name it as the destination. A person who has what the self-sufficiency was always trying to approximate, not the defended version of independence, not the managed version of not needing, but the genuine, undefended, freely inhabited condition of being fully at home in one's own existence. The avoidant does not consciously identify this quality. They simply find themselves drawn to the person who has it with a force that the usual strategies cannot account for. This person also carries something in the way they move through the world that is almost impossible to fake and immediately perceptible to the avoidant's exquisitely sensitive detection system. They are not available to be impressed, not cold, not withholding, not playing a game of strategic disinterest designed to create attraction. Genuinely, simply, not organised around the pursuit of approval, not monitoring the room for signs of how they are landing, not recalibrating their presentation based on who is watching or what response they are hoping to generate. They say what they think because they think it, not because they have assessed its likely reception. They pursue what interests them because it interests them, not because it might make them interesting to others. This quality, the absence of the approval-seeking orientation that governs so much of ordinary social behaviour, registers in the avoidant's nervous system as something between relief and intrigue. Relief, because there is no performance to manage, no social transaction requiring reciprocal performance, no implicit expectation that the avoidant mirror back enthusiasm or admiration or any particular emotional response. The interaction is clean in a way that most interactions are not. Intrigue, because someone who is not seeking approval cannot be controlled through the granting or withholding of it, and someone who cannot be controlled through approval is, to a system accustomed to maintaining relational distance through exactly that mechanism, genuinely novel. A person who does not need the avoidant's validation is a person the avoidant cannot manage at the usual distance. They have to actually show up. Third, the relationship this person has with their own emotions. This is where the picture gets specific, in a way that separates this person from people who merely appear similar on the surface. This person feels fully. They are not emotionally defended in the avoidant sense. They have not built the same architecture, do not run the same suppression program, do not experience the same lag between feeling and registering the feeling. Their emotional life is genuinely inhabited, rich, sometimes uncomfortable in its fullness, and inhabited anyway, because they have developed, through experience, through genuine processing of difficult things, the capacity to be with feeling without being dismantled by it. And this combination, feeling fully while remaining functional, is something the avoidance system has privately believed was impossible. The implicit belief running beneath the avoidant architecture is that full emotional experience and functional living are mutually exclusive. That the people who feel deeply are the ones who are controlled by feeling. That self-sufficiency requires the suppression of depth. That the choice was made, early and without full awareness, between feeling and functioning was chosen. This person disproves the belief simply by existing, by being visibly, clearly, fully feeling, and also grounded, also capable, also moving through the world with direction and intention and the specific competence that the avoidant most respects. They are evidence, embodied and undeniable, that the trade-off was not necessary, that something was given up that did not need to be given up. Meeting this evidence in human form is quietly destabilizing to a system that organized itself around the trade-off's necessity. The fourth quality is in the texture of how this person relates to other people, not specifically to the avoidant, to everyone. They are genuinely interested, not in the social performance of interest, the practiced attentiveness of someone who knows that asking questions makes people like them. Actually, specifically, curiously interested in the interior lives of the people around them, in what people think and why, in what shapes a person, what they fear, what they are quietly working toward, what they find funny, what breaks them open in the middle of an otherwise ordinary day. This quality of genuine curiosity about human interiority is not threatening to the avoidance system in the way that direct emotional pursuit is threatening. It does not arrive as pressure. It arrives as interest, the specific, non-invasive, I want to understand, not to manage, quality of attention that comes from someone who finds people genuinely fascinating, rather than someone who needs a specific person to perform a specific emotional function. Being on the receiving end of this attention is different from being pursued. Pursuit activates the avoidance system's defense because it carries need inside it. This curiosity carries no need. It is not asking for anything in return. It is simply, and this is the specific quality that matters, actually interested in what is there. The avoidant, who has spent years successfully preventing genuine interest in their actual interior from landing, finds this attention arriving before the defenses have time to fully mobilize. The curiosity is too clean, too free of agenda. The system that is calibrated to detect and deflect need finds itself receiving something that does not trigger the detection protocol. And in the gap between the attention arriving and the defenses catching up, something is seen, something real, something the avoidant did not entirely mean to show. And this person receives it without making it significant, without leaning in with hungry recognition, without the quality of someone who has been waiting for the real version and is now relieved to have found it. Just receives it, holds it lightly, continues the conversation. And the avoidant, whose entire system was braced for the consequence of being seen, finds there is no consequence. And something in the architecture recalibrates. This person has a life, a real, full, self-generating life that does not require the relationship to provide its meaning or momentum. They have people who matter to them, independent of the avoidant, pursuits that absorb genuine passion, ways of spending time that are not organised around availability to the person they are drawn to. A relationship with their own solitude that is peaceful rather than desperate, because they have enough interior richness to inhabit their own company without it becoming lonely. This matters to the avoidant system for reasons that go beyond the strategic, beyond the psychology of scarcity and the value of unavailability. At the deepest level, this quality communicates something the avoidant needs more than almost anything else. This relationship will not consume me. The specific terror underneath avoidant attachment, the terror that closeness means dissolution, that love means losing the constructed self, that intimacy requires the surrender of the autonomy that self-sufficiency built, finds no evidence for itself in this person. A person with a full life of their own does not need to enter the avoidant's life like a flood. They can be present without being total, close without being consuming, loving without the loving becoming the container that everything else is poured into. The avoidant's deepest fear has no target in this person, and the absence of the target is the beginning of the absence of the fear. Something about the way this person handles being let down, because the avoidant will let them down, not intentionally, not cruelly, but the pattern will produce moments of unavailability, of distance, of the specific and frustrating experience of reaching someone who is suddenly, inexplicably, somewhere else while standing right there. The avoidant will do this. The system will do this. The question is not whether it will happen, but what this person does when it does. And what this person does is something the avoidant has never experienced before from someone who mattered to them. They do not collapse. Do not pursue. Do not meet the withdrawal with an escalation of reaching that confirms everything the avoidance system suspected about the cost of closeness. They also do not perform indifference, do not go ice cold, do not deploy the punishing silence of someone demonstrating their capacity to not need. They feel it, they acknowledge it, internally if not immediately externally. They allow themselves the honest experience of disappointment. And then they return, not to the avoidant, not immediately, not with the urgent need to resolve the distance, but to themselves, to their own life, to the fullness that exists independent of the dynamic. They remain whole, through the avoidance withdrawal, through the temperature drop, through the moment that would have sent a different person into the spiral of pursuit and anxious interpretation and self-blame. They remain whole. And when the avoidant surfaces, as the avoidant does, as the pattern requires, as the distance eventually generates its own correction, this person is there, present, not wounded into distance and not desperate from the waiting, just there, in themselves, continuing. This is, for the avoidant system, the most extraordinary experience in the relational repertoire. Someone who survived the distance without either requiring it to end or being destroyed by it. Someone whose wholeness was not contingent on the avoidant's presence. Someone who demonstrated, through the simple, unperformed fact of their own continuity, that closeness with them is not a trap, that it does not require the avoidant to be present at a level that triggers the system's need to escape, that the relationship can breathe, can have distance in it, can have the natural fluctuation that the avoidance architecture requires, without breaking. There is a quality in this person's honesty that deserves its own space. They tell the truth, not as a virtue they perform, not as a value they have identified and work to embody. They tell the truth because it does not occur to them in any sustained way to do otherwise. The gap between what they think and what they say is narrow by nature rather than by discipline. The gap between what they feel and what they eventually express is not managed into non-existence, but it is not architecturally wide. For the avoidant who lives in the gap, who is an expert in the gap, whose entire relational experience has been organised around the management of what is expressed versus what is felt, this quality is simultaneously confronting and magnetic. Confronting because it implicitly challenges the gap's necessity. Because someone who does not maintain the gap makes the gap more visible, more chosen seeming, more something to account for. The honesty of this person, without being aimed at the avoidance defences, lands on the defences anyway. Not as an attack, as a light that makes their outline clearer. Magnetic because underneath the architecture, underneath the management, underneath every layer of constructed self-sufficiency, the avoidant is hungry for honesty, for the specific relief of being in the presence of someone who is actually saying what they actually mean, for the experience, rare, almost unfamiliar, of not having to interpret, of taking what is offered at face value, because face value and actual value are, in this person, the same thing. The last quality, the one that sits beneath all the others and makes them cohere into something that goes beyond attraction, into the specific, bewildering, defenses failing experience of authentic love. This person makes the avoidant feel that being fully known is survivable, not through reassurance, not through the declaration that they are safe, that the avoidant can trust them, that vulnerability will be honoured rather than weaponized. Declarations are processed by the part of the mind that can generate counter-arguments, that can cite the evidence of past experiences in which similar declarations preceded harm, through presence, through the accumulated, experiential, slowly undeniable evidence of what actually happens when the avoidant lets something real surface in this person's presence. It is received, held lightly, not made into more than it is, not leveraged for access to more, not stored for future use in moments of conflict, simply received, with the quiet, undemonstrative care of someone who finds the avoidant's actual interior, the defended, complicated, sometimes contradictory, genuinely human interior, not a problem to be managed, but a person to be known. The avoidant has been waiting, beneath every wall, beneath every management strategy, beneath the entire architecture of self-sufficiency, for this. For the evidence that the exposure the system was built to prevent is actually survivable. That being known does not inevitably mean being hurt by the knowing. That someone can see clearly past the surface and find, in what is there, something worth staying for. This person is that evidence. Not because they are perfect, not because they are uncomplicated or without their own wounds or immune to the frustrations of loving someone whose system works against the loving, but because they are genuine, whole, in possession of themselves in a way that allows them to be in genuine possession of the connection without being consumed by it. The avoidant falls for this person the way something falls when the thing that was holding it in place is quietly, without announcement, no longer there. Not dramatically, not in a moment that can be pointed to. Gradually, and then, at some unmarked threshold, completely. The defences do not come down. They become, in the presence of this specific person, over time, increasingly beside the point. The architecture built to prevent this exact experience discovers, for the first time in its history, that the experience it was built to prevent does not feel like what it was built to prevent. It does not feel like threat. It does not feel like dissolution. It does not feel like the loss of the self that self-sufficiency constructed. It feels like the self, for the first time, recognized. And that recognition, quiet, specific, arriving without fanfare, in the middle of something ordinary, in the presence of someone who was not trying to produce it, is the thing the avoidant has been defending against their entire life. and the thing they have been underneath every wall, quietly hoping for.